Welcome to the latest episode and the soft reboot, such as it is, of Open World Chat. And I say reboot not just because we have different intro music, also by the amazing Christopher Piatek, but Leanne Allen, my co-host, has sadly decided to take other paths in her life that do not include a podcast. And we will miss her dearly because she's a lot of fun. But speaking of a lot of fun, my new co-host is Jim Dandino. As I was telling him before, a man of many hats, of many dashing hats. One of them is, for folks who have been listening to this podcast will already know because he's been a guest, he is a writer for Den of Geek, which means he is a bona fide comics and genre journalist. And it means I don't have to know anything when Jim's on here. I can just do a lot of nodding. I can go, yes, well, I agree. I can agree a lot, and I can sound just as smart as he is. I can ask him how he feels about something, and I can take a nap, and it's going to be all around a great thing. So welcome back, Jim, and welcome to your new role.
And thank you for having me. I'm very excited to join the team. And, you know, the fun thing about being a nerd on the internet, and especially a semi-professional nerd on the internet, is I also don't have to know anything about anything in order to expound at great length about it. So I'm excited to try and bullshit my way through lots of different subjects here.
Yes, but you have the professional skill as to, how to bullshit through, as opposed to, someone like me who would just sort of blather and drool.
No, I am sharp. I am on point, and you will not be able to tell that I have no idea what I'm talking about.
That's a challenge, listeners. You've been challenged.
No prizes. We're going to hand out no prizes like their water.
That's your first reference.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Classic. They don't do them anymore, do they?
No, sadly. They don't have a lot of fun anymore. It's not fun.
Mega bummer.
That's an issue for another time, and a company for another time to discuss, because we are going to be looking back at the recent DC Fandome, which had a lot of announcements, and there were aftershocks and there were foreshocks. So it's nice to have this conversation a week after to put some of the news that's come out since in perspective, but also talk a little about the news, the big news, the obvious big news, which we'll get to leading into it. But in the short term, in the immediate term, let's talk about Fandome.
Yes, Fandome. So DC's now, I guess, annual Comic-Con substitute, which ran the weekend after New York Comic-Con. And it's turning into it's probably the most well-received online Comic-Con out there. We saw during the pandemic, we saw a lot of conventions try and do a virtual thing. New York Comic Con had their metaverse thing. CCI, or San Diego Comic Con, had an online kind of supplement, and people didn't really take to that much, right? It's like watching another show, especially with the pre-recorded panels and stuff. For some reason, though, Fandome year one blew the doors off. People were genuinely surprised at how interesting and effective it was as a hype vehicle for DC's future publishing and visual efforts. And Fandome year two came back actually probably more successful than the first. Tripled, according to their own internal announcements, and so take it with a grain of salt, but tripled viewership from year one.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, had a lot of really interesting hype coming out of it. We got the first trailer for the Batman, for Robert Pattinson's and Matt Reeves' new Batman entry. We got first look at some footage from The Flash, which is going to be Flashpoint. We saw the back of Michael Keaton's head. Very exciting. Teaser footage from Black Adam. We saw The Rock desiccate a guy with electricity, which was really cool. We saw some production art from Blue Beetle, some stills from Aquaman and Shazam 2. We got news on the new animated features. Battle of the Super Sons is something that's pretty exciting for me. And we got a bunch of TV stuff. We got the trailer for the new Peacemaker show. We got some info on a Batman the Animated Series prequel in Cape Crusader. We got some comic stuff. We got a bunch of interesting stuff out of Milestone Comics, which I'm excited to talk about. And it was just, I think with a year of lead time, a year of planning, they were able to do a little bit better job at organizing the flow of information to make it more exciting for people. This one had a lot of good stuff in it coming out of it, and it was set up so that it really kind of supercharged the hype train on a lot of these projects. What did you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, it did. They did a good job in a sense. They did a good job in terms of production, of organization of material. They didn't linger too long on, but can I just say, I can't stand the format. I can't stand the variety show, like the supermodel presenters up there saying, "Oh, and we know if you're as big a fan as I am." It's like, oh, come on. Yeah. You didn't know any of this stuff before you got the gig and you studied the script. I mean, don't insult my intelligence. I guess I see something like this, or I go to it, and I want it to be something like, the Nintendo Direct thing, where they announce who's going to be on Smash Brothers, and just something a little more down to earth, a little bit more inclusive of me rather than being the glitzy stage show. But that's just me. I
think that's totally fair. I think that we are the demographic that they can absolutely take for granted, though. Because we're here no matter what they do, right? Mm-hmm. I think that the glitzy stage show, I think that the celebrities with the crossover appeal, those people are there to talk to people who are not us, because we know what they're doing. We read previews when it comes out. We are plugged into all of the websites with the casting rumors and the behind the scenes shots and the leaked previs special effects shots and stuff like that. We know all of this stuff. We're not the ones that they need to talk to. The ones that they need to talk to are the ones who are going to get excited by Serena Williams showing up in a Wonder Woman tribute, So yeah. I'm cool with it.
All 6 of those people who tuned in, it was for them.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about this one is that they let it run for what was it, 48 hours. And I think that's one of the ways where Fandome outpaced some of the other digital Comic Cons, is that the availability of the content is much more restricted in the other Comic Cons. Whereas Fandome, you have a schedule, and like if you want to watch something, when it's going to come back around if you missed it the first time. So. Yeah.
I mean, you don't get that kind of live interaction.
No,
vibe. And that's what's great about the cons. Honestly, the news is great. I love the news. You could put out the news in any one of half dozen other ways, and it often is. But that's sort of personal. I'm in the room with the person. I'm seeing them off the cuff. It'll never replace that.
Absolutely. I go to comic book conventions. I don't go to comic book conventions for the news. I don't go to the comic book conventions for the panels. Honestly, I use the panels as a chance to sit down in the middle of the con. I go to the cons to shop and to hit Artist Alley. That's what the joy of being at a comic book convention is to me, is having a chance to get that kind of FaceTime with the folks who made the stuff that I love, and not sit there and listen to, scripted marketing pitches.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to say that was my curmudgeonly comment for the conversation here, but I seriously doubt that's true.
We're both old white dudes. It's going to happen. I think we just need to resign ourselves to the fact that we're going to end up complaining about something, and somebody on the internet is going to tell us that we're yelling at clouds. And
that's all right. Complaining is what sets us apart from the animals. I'm all for
absolutely. It. You don't see monkeys bitching. Losers.
So the hype going in didn't always match the hype coming out. And I'm thinking of all the buildup and everything for Gotham Knights, for the Arkham video game sequel. And that was one of the things I was most hyped about.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard any response at all. It's like, I thought it's built around the Court of Owls, which is, sort of obvious place to go with this format. It's got the same developers as the first one. So, it's got that aesthetic. It's going to be good. We didn't get any sense of gameplay.
Is it same developers as the first one or same developers as Arkham Origins?
Same developers as the first one.
Okay.
What is it?
Arkham Origins was bad.
Yeah. WB Games Montreal or something.
Okay.
Who did have a little bit of involvement in the second one, but so they say. I have no idea what. But these are both terrific games that exceeded expectations, and again, make me ask why things like animation, video games, these sort of peripheral media to the core product here. Why is DC so much better than Marvel?
The peripheral media, because they keep more of it, I think, tightly controlled.
You can't control more tightly than Ike Perlmutter did.
Ike farmed out a ton of stuff. Ike controlled whether or not girls showed up in it, but other than that, he let them do whatever they wanted, right? That's not fair. He also ruined the Marvel Capcom games, but that's a totally different episode for me to get mad about. But like creatively, I feel like DC's video games and especially their animation have been much more closely aligned, at least to the values of the comics. On the animation side, I think it's because of the legacy of Batman the Animated Series. I think that is just a juggernaut in the history of American animation, and the kind of one of the endpoints of history in superhero animation. I think that you cannot possibly overstate the importance of Batman the Animated Series to everything that came after, even if it was a response to it as opposed to a continuation of it. So having that as like one of the pillars of their external their animation department then informs everything that they do moving forward. And that because it wasn't even faithful to the comics, it changed how the comics were. The comics, everything reacted to Batman the Animated Series. So as the comics became more faithful to the animated series, and then everything that followed stayed faithful to Batman the Animated Series, they were also then being faithful to what DC was trying to do in the comics. The games too. I mean, you want to talk about faithful to the animated series, you bring in, they have most of the voice cast doing Arkham Asylum that was doing Batman the Animated Series, right? Like it is just more than anything else, more than the Keaton Batman movies, more than the Bale Batman movies. I think Batman the Animated Series is the thing that casts the shadow on the cave wall when we're talking about comic book media. And I think that because that's what everything is chasing, I think that's why you have that greater degree of faithfulness.
Yeah.
Marvel doesn't have the closest thing Marvel has to that is the X-Men, the animated series, and the Marvel's efforts to gut the X-Men franchise over the decade before House of X effectively eliminated that show's influence.
Yeah, and of course, the Justice League cartoon was in the shadow of the same creative team, but it then cast its own shadow. I think it. So now that shadow is waning, but they're going to try. We're getting an attempt to re-shadow. I'm sorry, my descriptors ran out there, but
just wandered off. Well, I think they're actually transitioning into Teen Titans Go. I think that Teen Titans Go is because you see Teen Titans Go now starting to kind of infect the way that other stories, right? You have the Teen Titans Go DC Superheroes Girl crossover that they've announced. You have Teen Titans versus Teen Titans Go, which already came out. Teen Titans Go to the Movies, which was basically Mystery Science Theater 3000, but with the Teen Titans in it. You have Harley Quinn is kind of just an adult version of Teen Titans Go, right? It's the same kind of it's the same kind of humor, just filthy, right? Like it's the same humor sensibility, just really, really dirty about it. So I think that maybe you're right that the animated series and Justice League are starting to wane a little bit. I think that Teen Titans Go is what's starting to supplant it.
Well, except we're getting the Cape Crusader cartoon.
Right. And we've had, and actually, to be completely fair, we've had the animated series Adventures Continue running in the comics for the last year or so too, and it's been very good.
Yeah. But they're trying to get that back now, including, bringing in Bruce Timm to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Cool. Keep doing it.
Yeah, seriously. Although one does wonder, Bruce Timm Unchained brought us that last season or so, I guess, of the old series, the old Batman series. Mm-hmm. And what am I trying to think of? The Killing Joke cartoon.
I'm doing my absolute best to wipe the movie adaptation of Killing Joke from my memory. So thank you for reminding me of it. It was terrible.
It was terrible, but it was that thing that everyone always accused Bruce Timm of, is this weird desire to get Batman and Batgirl together.
Yeah.
And that was something that he was held back on over the years, that then you started to see when he had room, and then boom, oh my God.
No, thank you.
He made up for lost time. I don't know. So
that's fine. Keep it all there.
Yeah, right. So
right? If we're talking about a Batman the Animated Series prequel, she's going to be 14 in this. So I think if the world has moved past John Byrne, then I'm pretty sure that the world has also moved past this being a thing that's going to happen on screen.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. I mean, I hope so. Are we going to be looking forward to that?
No, I don't. Just the math just doesn't really check out. If it's going to be an actual prequel to the show, I mean, she was hiding security cameras in her teddy bears when she was introduced in the cartoon. If you can't walk back further from that and have Batman and Batgirl be a thing without it being incredibly problematic. And DC does not seem like DC leadership of late does not seem like they would have very much tolerance for something like that.
Well, that's good to hear. You would know that better than I, obviously, with your nose in the industry like that.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about the comics? Because they've had a banger. They had a banger of a fandom on the comic side between Superman and John Kent right before it, the Milestone announcement, and the new Gene Yang, Bernard Chang Monkey Prince book, and the War of the Amazons, which I think they're starting to lead into this week when they opened up the Well of Souls and started introducing trans women to Themyscira. So DC Comics has been kind of hitting on all cylinders in the last month or so. And fandom was, I think, one of the high points. You want to talk about Superman a little bit? Because it made all of the right people really angry.
Yeah, Superman. That was the foreshock going into it. And I was kind of wondering whether they were going to sort of move on by it or really double down on it in fandom. And they doubled down. Mm-hmm. They're, proud of what they're doing. And it's an interesting title now, not just because we have a new Superman who is bi.
And I will say this: I am a fan of Taylor's writing, generally speaking. Mm-hmm. I really liked his Wolverine book when he was writing Laura, and Deceased hit just right. His Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man was outstanding, really unsung. But unsung book that was one of the best Spider-Man books that's been published in the last decade or so. So his Superman has been hitting very well for me. To have him, to let him do this, to let him make John bi, I think is it sends a message about, it sends the same kind of message that changing the motto from truth, justice, and the American way to what is it? Truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. Yep. Yeah. First of all, changing the motto back to that, because as my editor at Den of Geek will tell you, that's what it was before World War II and before Frederick Wertham got his grubby
I had
paws.
No idea.
Yes. It was Truth, Justice, and a Better Tomorrow originally. It got changed to Truth, Justice, and the American Way to sell war bonds during World War II. Changed back after the war, but then they changed it back to Truth, Justice, and the American Way. I think he said when Frederick Wertham spooked the comics industry into.
This is an originalist Superman.
It absolutely is. Weird how people are originalists about some things and not others. No, but I think DC's sending a message about who they value, about the audiences that they value, and I like how they're doing it with the stories that they're telling. I also like how they're doing it with their hiring practices. I like that they fired the colorist on Superman for being a vicious, nasty homophobe.
After pretending he wasn't for a while.
Yep. After pretending he wasn't. I like Aaron Lopresti's wife going on Twitter and complaining about how DC won't hire anybody associated with Comicsgate anymore. I think that's but like, you know what, they're talking the talk and they're walking the walk. Yeah. This is not them introducing a bisexual tertiary character in a mini series and then shuffling them off into the background. This is not having a main character kiss a girl once and then never addressing her sexuality again for the next 20 issues, like other companies have done. They are making moves to make their character lineup more inclusive. They are making a concerted effort to make their publishing line more diverse, and they are sending a message to people that not only do we value you, not only do we want you to tell these stories with us, but we also want to make sure that you're safe and that you feel like we're valued, that you feel like we value you, and not just that we are trying to cash in on your identity. So
yeah, it's ridiculous.
For what it's worth, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, but whatever.
Well, I've been, and I shouldn't be. I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth, but I've actually been surprised by the reaction, the negative reaction, the pushback on this. I shouldn't be anymore. Why? I mean, there's no limits to the pushback on this, but people, that I think I know on social media, and I think a lot of people, and this is a whole other argument, I don't think this would be a big deal either, but a lot of people are approaching it like it's some sort of retcon. And because they don't know what's going on in the comics. It's not a retcon. This is a new character, and we're learning about this character. And this is an aspect of this character, and go with it. Learn like the rest of us. It's an interesting character, and that's part of it.
Trust the storytellers to tell their story. And I think you're right. I think that some of them are not actually invested in the comics, and they're getting whipped up about it by secondary reporting. And those folks, it's the same problem that the rest of society has. You don't need to have an opinion on every single thing just because your Facebook feed told you something was happening. But at the same time, I think I feel like inside the tent, right, that the actual comics community, and not the people that are outside the comics community reacting to this, I think that they are mostly okay with it. I feel like there's as vocal a reaction in support of it as there is opposed to it, which is a little bit different from in the past, where I think that the bigots and the hate mongers have been able to successfully drown out the decent folks on issues like this.
I think it overshadows the really more interesting discussion in this comic, in this title, is that here you've got Taylor taking on what is quite possibly the unwritable comics plot. We have Superman engaging in real world politics, and or at least the comic version of them,
Yep.
but still they're recognizable as real world politics. This is always the conversation, one of the water cooler conversations about comics. Well, if I was Superman, I'd do this, or why doesn't Superman worry about this massacre in this country, or this political situation. And you don't. It's part of why you bottle up these characters into cities,
Right.
that then become, even if they're New York, they become somewhat fantastical. But
Right.
so he's stepping out of that, and there's only going to be so far you can go with that. And so I'm assuming at some point he's going to step back from it, or I'm fascinated. I'm loving it. It could be a writing rabbit hole though. And it might be hard to step back from. It's the unwritable story. You think he's up to it?
I do think he's up to it. He's tackled some, he did an issue about a kid with cancer in Spider-Man, and it was just heartbreaking. It was just brutal to read. It was the hardest I've ever cried at a comic book before. But he pulled it back to regular Spider-Man stuff, like the next issue, right? I think that superhero comics make it, they have an easy out in that as soon as you don't want to talk about climate change anymore, you can have Lex Luthor and a giant robot attack downtown Metropolis. And then all of a sudden, Superman's off dealing with that. I am sympathetic to the argument that introducing real world politics breaks the format a little bit. Because realistically speaking, in a world with super scientists, climate change shouldn't be a thing. Right. The idea that, Superman and Steel and Rip Hunter and all of these, geniuses and time travelers haven't figured out a way to suck a bunch of carbon out of the atmosphere and drop it in the ocean floor is ridiculous on its face. For me, the reason why interjecting some of these real world politics, as long as it's handled kind of delicately and only kind of glanced upon, the reason why interjecting these real world politics into the book, especially on climate change, is because you hear these climate scientists out there saying the most important thing you can do as on an individual level, the most important thing that you can do to address climate change is to just not stop talking about it, to make sure that people are hearing about it constantly, are understanding that it's an issue, that it makes it harder for the denialists, that makes it the background kind of buzz and need to address the issue even stronger. I think that having Superman address it in the book directly is valuable. I think that there is story value, and I think that there is societal value.
Sure.
I think
don't get me wrong.
thing.
Yeah. I'm all for that too. There's a catharsis to the superhero experience that I think that stuff needs to be in there sometimes. I think back on when, what's his name? Babylon 5 guy. I don't want
Straczynski. Oh, Grounded. Oh my God.
Well, when he had his Thor run, and I always think of the scene where you have this conflict in Africa. It was supposed to, it was an ethnic conflict. It was reflecting what was on the news, and Thor comes down and boom, he's got the Odin power. Then he splits open the earth. It was extremely cathartic, but This is different. This is not a scene or a moment or a story arc. This is Superman committing to being this kind of Superman.
Right.
That's a whole different, that's what I'm afraid might be the unwritable story, is that character.
He did used to wear jeans and a t-shirt and punch the hell out of industrialists, right? If we're talking about going back to Superman's roots, Superman was kind of very explicitly left-wing populist when he was first introduced, and only again in the 50s was he kind of dragged towards that jingoistic, nationalistic, issueless Boy Scout. I think that out of all of them, I think that Superman is the best equipped to do that, right? Like, I think that why doesn't Superman stop climate change is the same kind of argument as like, why doesn't Batman just buy crime? But I think that Superman addressing climate change in his comic is much more in line with the kind of Superman stories that that have been told historically than, you know, a comic book about Batman investing some of his fortune in support services, which, to be fair, we're also getting in Tom Taylor's Nightwing right now, where Taylor is has Nightwing using the fortune that he inherited from Alfred to set up a social safety net in Bloodhaven.
Oh, I need to read that. I have not been reading that.
It's so good. It's so good. And the last issue that just came out has art from Robbie Rodriguez that is just unbelievably good. It's really Nightwing is definitely on my best of the year list.
Well, I'll take a look, because I worry about whether Taylor has the skill to keep this going, but I too have a lot of faith in him. So, and it's making Superman, to me, the most exciting, regular, mainstream big two comic out there right now. I'm loving it.
Good stuff. If Inferno wasn't coming out right now, I'd be in the same boat. But I do like my angry power lesbians.
All right, well, let's talk about Milestone. Yeah, let's talk about Milestone.
Yeah, so Milestone has been humming along both in reprint form at DC, reprinting the old Dwayne McDuffie and Dennis Cowan and Derek Dingle and the rest of the crew, reprinting the old stuff on DC Universe, and printing updated season 1 versions of the classic Milestone characters. You've got a Static Shock book from Vita Ayala, Nick Draper-Ivey, and Criss Cross. You have, I forget who's doing Icon. I know Reggie Hudlin is doing the scripting for Icon, and they're fantastic now.
We got Blood Syndicate coming.
Blood Syndicate is coming. We no update on who's doing it. We have Milestone crossing over into other media. We're going to get a Milestone animated feature written by Brandon Thomas, who is having himself quite a year. And we have a static movie in the works with the script, I think, already delivered, they said. And we have the Milestone Initiative, where DC is actively recruiting artists and writers of color to train them up on how to make comics the DC way, and then providing them with opportunities to be published, I think. So
that is really exciting, because it sounds like, looking into what they're going to do, it's actually a little bit more baby step than maybe it sounded on the announcement. But still, if something like this develops more, and if Marvel follows suit, you could really see not just a transformation of the look of the comics creators assembled here, but what they've been wanting, which is more of a transformation of the audience, which has been happening organically, clearly,
right?
But they'd like to kick that into overdrive because they need readers.
Well, and they need readers, but you need to. You've been telling the same stories with the same characters for 70, 80 years now. You need fresh eyes. You need people who are bringing different perspectives and different baggage to the stories that they're telling with Superman and with Wonder Woman and with Batman. Otherwise, you're going to keep getting the same stories told over and over again, and you're going to have to reboot the universe every 5 years like they've been doing. And I think that I'm a little bit concerned in that I don't want it homogenizing individual styles. We'll have to see how they actually train these folks. I think the value to having a diverse crew of artists and writers making your comics is that you can get 3 different books that look and read 3 different ways. And the more they kind of funnel folks towards a house style, the less that value is maximized. I don't think that's what they're going to do, though.
Yeah, they need to go full on Kubert School to do something like that, I think.
And I think they're partnering with the Kubert School a little bit for some of it. Yeah. But it's not, I think that as long as they're encouraging distinct voices, I think that is something that I'm not going to have to worry too much about. I'm really excited about kind of a formal training structure for comics. Not to be too much of a downer, but like, I think one of the things that the Warren Ellis problems exposed, for lack of a better term, about the comics industry as a whole is that the who you know factor was so important to people breaking into comics that it was really rife for abuse. I think that opening up the Milestone training program provides a pathway for people to get into mainstream superhero comics, into working in mainstream superhero comics that isn't necessarily based on being friends with somebody already famous on their message board. Mm-hmm. And that'll protect the new creators a little bit better too. That'll, they won't be subject to, the whims of the people that are providing them with the opportunities in the same kind of way. I think anything that can be done to professionalize the comics workforce is really valuable.
I'd be curious how this developed behind the scenes, because they said they were partnering with Ally, and I'm thinking, boy, Ally, that sounds like a nonprofit or something. No, it's this giant virtual bank, which means probably Warner, the DC isn't putting much or any of their own money into it, so it's no risk for them.
Great, exactly. Like the less, honestly, like I really like the way things are going right now at DC, and the less the suits have to worry about what they're doing, the more freedom they're going to have to do fun, inventive stuff. Mm-hmm. So awesome. Partner with whoever you want. Let them fund it as long as you keep making. And I don't think you can understate the difference that having Marie Javins at the helm has made. Javins is an old timeline worker, right? She is one of the best colorists was one of the best colorists at Marvel in the 80s and 90s, and has kind of moved up through the ranks and done a bunch of different jobs in the comics industry until now she's finally become the editor-in-chief of DC. And since the first books that she started editing as editor-in-chief had started hitting, you've seen a marked difference in DC's publishing output. You see different voices, you see experimental formats. They are doing a ton of anthologies now, and the anthologies are letting them tell a ton of different kinds of stories. You're seeing different writers and artists, telling stories in different ways, and you're seeing different content in the books. And I think that that's all been brought about because she's there. She's enabling that, right? And I think that she has been just a breath of fresh air over there. It is, and we're talking about all of this external stuff creatively inside the books. This is the freshest they've felt since DCU. This is the freshest that these books have felt since Dr. Fate and Omega Men and New Superman were first coming out. And it's a really good time to be reading DC Comics, and it doesn't seem like there's anything bad on the immediate horizon, which is why, as comic book fans, we should be terrified.
Yeah, no, I've been historically a bit of a Marvel zombie in the old traditional sense of the word, and DC is pretty exciting these days. Yeah, so before we go, because we're running out of time, let's just do a quick rundown on those trailers. Yes. Just a quick, what do you think? Why don't we start with the fun one, the Peacemaker?
I'm 100% in. I love the Suicide Squad. I think that John Cena is one of the funniest people, one of the most unexpectedly funny people working in film right now. And I'm very interested to see what sort of zany and terrible stuff they force him to do.
Yeah. I'm with you. I don't know. None of the Suicide Squads have ever really interested me, but I'm into this. I'm on board. I'm fully on board.
Yeah.
All right. So what about Batman?
I mean, I'm going to see it. It looks like every other Batman movie, except for the Zack Snyder one, which is a plus, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. I have a lot of worries about this. I'll be honest. From the look of it, it almost seems like we're going to have Catwoman civilizing Batman, which, I hope that's wrong. It did bug me when Matt Reeves is there saying, well, all these Batman stories, they're always like, some of, later in life, and they get into almost fantasy. We thought, what about looking at a younger Batman? And, we go straight back to and borrow from Batman Year One. And I'm like, dude, did you see Batman Begins? They
literally the same movie. Literally the same movie. Our folks are speculating that it might be Hush, but there's a lot about Hush that is not adaptable.
Yeah.
And I think if you're just taking the mystery of the Hush comics, you are completely missing the point of the Hush story. Because the mystery was terrible. Jeff Loeb can't actually write mystery. He's really bad at it. The Long Halloween is bad. Anyway, I don't think it's Hush. I think it's just a kind of a gritty Riddler story. There are enough really good actors in it where it's going to probably be a good movie regardless. It just doesn't excite me the same way that it's not what I'm looking for. Yep.
So now what about, speaking of dark, Black Adam?
I don't think that, look, that movie is going to have the Justice Society in it. So I don't think that clip is necessarily reflective of what the whole movie is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever seen a movie that The Rock's been in that hasn't been very entertaining, at least. So I'm there. That said, the teaser footage didn't really do it for me. But that's not what I'm expecting the movie to look like. I thought the first Shazam was great.
Yeah, I did too. And I'm one of these, old grouchy, I'm grouchy. I'm like, how can you have Black Adam in his, premiere in his own movie? Where is he in Shazam? What's going on? And I see the intro and it's like, how are you going to make this guy sympathetic when the first thing he shows up does like murder a bunch of people? But, I thought about it and I'm like, well, all those people are probably going to be bad.
Yeah.
And they're going to have it coming. So that's all right.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, you know what? This looks like fun. I need to get over myself. Only, the really old people say, well, that's not my Black Adam. Yeah, whatever. I was that guy for a while. The Marvel movies gave me plenty of, this is my fill in the blank. They all look so familiar. All right out of the comics. Okay, I've had my fix. I'll take it either way now. Just give me a good movie.
Yep, I'm fine. I'm there for it, even if it's not necessarily tickling my fancy yet. I have faith that it's going to be something that's interesting. What about Flash?
I can't get excited about Flash. I'm excited to see Michael Keaton. There's the difference between that and being excited about the actual movie.
Yeah.
Couldn't we have taken, or it's not going to be Flashpoint. It's going to be something with Flashpoint's name smacked on it, inspired by Flashpoint.
Yep.
But we did that on TV, and
it was great.
It was great.
I loved Crisis. I think that the DC TV crossovers are a highlight every year.
Mm-hmm.
This is just not. It doesn't have the same joy.
I agree with you, but again, Keaton, excited.
Sure.
I'll go for
I'll
that.
Be there. I'll be there. Yep.
All right. So we're done for this time around. Starting next time, you'll start seeing that parade of strange random guests like we've had before, but we'll be a little less NPR and a little more geeky for you. We may have lost our way a little bit the last couple, although they were sure interesting.
We'll get there. We'll get some good stuff for you.
All right.
Thanks
for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.